I do some consulting work on American
feeling in the room was
You
palpable.
don't ever say to her that
One about the Chautauqua Institute.
Introductory discussion on the ethical
We laugh.
more of a community.
What China took back over.
Currently doing in autism.
She's been called a Catholic visionary and a renegade nun. One of the leading spiritual voices of our day, Sister Joan Chittister has spent 40 years advocating for a more just church and world. A member of the Benedictine Sisters of Erie, she is a sought-after speaker and the best-selling author of more than 50 books. Her resume of honors and awards includes 12 honorary doctorates, plus the one she earned from Penn State in speech communication. We'll talk with her about her faith journey, about the role of women in the church, and about the stunning new biography about her life and influence. Here's our conversation with Sister Joan Chittister. Sister Joan Chittister, welcome back to Penn State and to our studios. It's a delight to see you again.
Thanks, Patty. I love this place. I come at the drop of any excuse. So,
Well, actually, you're here for a very big reason. In fact, Penn State has partnered with Mercyhurst University in Erie and the Erie Benedictine community to preserve your literary archives.
Yeah.
So why those two universities and who gets what?
well, we all get everything thanks to Penn State. Thanks to Penn State. These two universities, of course, Mercyhurst was my bachelor's degree, and just a marvelous teaching university. I mean, I've said to those people, I've been around the world 5, 6, 7 times now, and I have never had to apologize for that early education. And on the basis of that education, Penn State was just a natural for me.
For your PhD?
Opportunity, yes, for the PhD, because it was the same quality of learning. I had been accustomed to research and to heavy thinking and being able to produce. So it was the perfect marriage. And when it came time to determine where all of this material was going to go, it was very difficult. And out of the blue, now to be quite frank, small colleges simply could not have handled my papers. There were already too much, something like 90 linear feet or something of that nature, of papers that had already
Papers that are aside from your 50-plus books.
Oh, absolutely, definitely aside. All of them speeches or research projects or something of that nature. And Penn State said, when they were interested in the papers, I said, why would you care about the papers of a nun? I mean, you have to realize that a lot of this is going to come out of a theological perspective, and a lot of it out of questions of the role of church and society and all those things. And that doesn't seem to me that you would care about that. Well, I mean, I just got phenomenal information about the way Penn State handles its archives and libraries and incorporates it into every department. Then they said this: however, we understand that you have a very close relationship with Mercyhurst. Tell you what, your community is very concerned about losing your papers, and rightly so, but we do not have the physical background to keep them. And so it was Penn State that said, look, let's try something new. What if Penn State becomes the site of all of your papers and journals and all that material, but we will service both your community and
the
your
Benedictine
college
community and Mercyhurst
College.
By digitizing, I'm imagining, all of this material.
So, as a result, the Benedictine Sisters have access to everything, and we have an archive room. People can come in there and study.
You asked just a moment ago, why would Penn State be interested in the work of a nun? And the truth of the matter is, if you had not become a nun, this body of work would not exist.
That's exactly right.
It was becoming a nun that allowed you first to go to Mercyhurst and then on
and then to Penn State. You see that?
For your PhD in
That's
speech
right.
communication.
That's right.
So you were 16 years old.
Yeah.
Actually, you were 15 years old when you knocked on the door of the prioress and said, I want to be a nun. She told you, she turned you away.
Yes.
Said
come
you
back
come
next
back
year,
next
dear.
year.
Yes.
What
come.
happened when you came back the next
Well,
year?
I did. On April 26th, the next year, I did exactly the same thing. Walked to the same doorway, pressed the same bell, and waited for her door to open. And she came out. She was looking around, you know, looking for somebody who was looking for her. And then I said to her mother, I rang your bell. And she looked at me for a minute, and I could tell she didn't really remember. And I said, Mother, I came last year, and I told you that that I wanted to be a Benedictine. She said, yes, dear, yes. I said, well, I was 15. You told me that I couldn't enter until I'm 16. Well, I'm 16 today. And she looked at me like this. She said, so? I said, so? I'm 16 now, so I'd like to enter. And she suddenly, you could see everything go together in her head. And she said, my dear child, she said, no, you can't enter. And I said, why not? And she said, well, dear, you're an only child, and we don't take only children. Why not? I'd never had anybody give me that reason for not being able to do anything in life. And she said, because, dear, someday your mother is going to need you. And you see, if you enter the convent, you won't be able to help her as much as she should be helped. So no, we don't take only children. So I left, Patty, and I went straight home. Well, out that back door, up Parade Street as fast as I could get, over to Holland, and I got in the door and I said, Mom, something terrible happened. And she said, what's that? I said, I went to see Mother Sylvester about entering today because I'm 16 and you can enter when you're 16. My mother said, really? And I said, but I'm not allowed. And she said, why not? And I said, because I'm an only child. My mother sat up like this, little, strong little woman, and she said, because you're an only child? Yes, they say you're going to need me. She said, call Mother Sylvester's office and get an appointment. And 2 hours later, we appeared at that same convent, in that same parlor. And my mother made it Mother Sylvester was very kind. Oh no, Mrs. Chittister, she said, we wouldn't do that. We know Joan is an only child. And my mother said, yes, she is. And that is not her fault. And I do not want her life lived paying for my life. She can do anything she wants to do. Now, Mother, I'm going to tell you something. You may not want Joan in this community, and that's fine. But I know this kid better than you do. And she's made up her mind to be a nun, and she will be one, either here or somewhere else. And Mother Sylvester said, do you mean that? And she said, I do mean it. That's why I'm here. And she said, well, then we better begin to talk about an entrance.
And you know, it should be added that your mother wanted to be a nun, and in fact had sewn her own habit.
That's right.
She was the youngest of 13 children.
Yes.
She hid it under her bed, and when her mother found it, she burned it.
Yes, because she was the youngest of 13. Grandpa was very sick at that time. She said, I can't do this alone. I can't do this without you. I can't let you go to a convent. Now, here's the irony. She was going to go to Mercyhurst. She intended to be a mercy nun in Erie because the Mercies already taught in Du Bois. So she had the Mercies in grade school. So she was coming to Erie to be a Sister of Mercy. And Grandma just couldn't do it. And so the years went by, and she and my dad had dated since high school. And when he finished high school, that was it. That was it. She never dated anybody else.
You mentioned your father, and you're talking about your biological father.
Yes, that's right, Dan Doherty.
In Tom Roberts' hot off the press, absolutely stunning biography of your life, Joan Chittister, Her Journey from Certainty to Faith, he tells us a story about Joan Chittister that even your closest friends didn't know. Your biological father died when you were just 3 years old.
And my mother married again.
And your mother remarried.
Right, yeah, she married, and it was an interesting dynamic to us in an academic fashion now, Patty. But then it wasn't interesting. It was cataclysmic. My mother was Irish Roman Catholic, and my stepfather was Presbyterian. And one thing I can attest to, Catholics did not have a monopoly on prejudice. Every Christian denomination had been taught that everybody else was wrong, and the anti-Catholicism was particularly deep. There was a fear, not unfounded, about papal control of the Catholic mind and Catholic institutions and everything that went with it. At any rate,
This was a mixed marriage.
this was what you call a mixed marriage.
And it was big.
And it was big at that time, and every church taught that it was wrong. We should not have, you married your own. And so when these two married, they crossed every possible boundary. And his family and his mother was no happier about it than members of the Catholic community would have been. Now, interestingly enough, her family, the Catholic family, didn't fuss about this at all. If this is what they wanted to do, they were happy. But my stepfather's mother was really, this was a major problem for her. At any rate, the point is that message never really, or that marriage rather, never really fit on any level. You know, it's very hard for a young couple under any circumstances to maintain a marriage when the families are against it. The old prejudices were entombed in both of them. And so I used to say life was wonderful until they began to fight the wars of religion all over again. And once we got to the religious level, I knew there was no saving it. It was going to be catastrophic. And so that marriage was fraught, and he drank heavily, and every time he drank, these are the issues that came up. So it was a very volatile environment.
In fact, there's a story in that book where your mother talks your stepfather into going to the church to see about converting. And when he reads that the Catholic Church is the one true church, and this implies that his mother is not going to go to heaven, he said, "I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Loretta, we're leaving."
Yeah, no, he said this, actually. He said to the priest, "Are you telling me that my mother is not going to go to heaven?" And the priest, they had these little booklets or something, pushed the book over in front of him and said, "Well, read, what does it say?" And he turned to Loretta and he said, "I'm out of here. Are you coming with me or staying with him?" She got up and they both walked out. And after that, it was never a matter of conversation whatsoever. So that priest managed to cement the division that was built right into this marriage socially. And then you add alcohol to that and see what you get. It's a witch's brew. And they were both good people. I know they both loved me. I never doubted that I was loved by either one of them. My father was wonderful to me, but the environment was just.
And there were frequent moves because of violent outbursts and your family being kicked out of this house or this apartment because of it.
Right.
So
That's
for
right.
you, when you finally went to the convent at age 16, it was the first time in your life that you felt truly, absolutely safe and free.
Safe, free, peaceful, quiet, ordered, purposeful, stable, and you could trust it. You could count on it. And so it was a very special kind of gift. I didn't consciously know that until I got there and realized I've been in the community for 64 years. I've never heard a voice raised. Coming out of exactly the opposite dynamic and everything that it implies for a relationship, for psychological development, for a sense of security, and yet the community offered all of that and a good life and a sense of purpose, and I loved them. I loved the sisters because they were very good with one another. We kids could see that. They were very funny, and they worked. I mean, they were wonderful. It was so easy. I know that there are all those Catholic stories about raging nuns, but I never had one.
And my parents never had one. I
No,
know.
I never had one. I wasn't afraid. There wasn't any sister I was afraid of. I never saw a sister hurt anybody. And so when I got into St. Benedict's, it was a small school. We were all small classes, and the sisters and the kids mixed all the time. I knew that that life was life-giving. And I was right. I've never regretted it.
In fact, in the book, Tom Roberts, he dedicates, on the dedication page, he dedicates it to women religious who are in places all over the world, oftentimes the only people representing the Catholic Church.
That's right.
And of course, you're one of them. You've literally been to 30 countries over the
60.
last 60 countries, many of them many, many, many times.
That's right.
Tell us a little bit about the work that you do in these countries and why.
That work took several forms. At first, I began to be called to speak in communities who were going through what we called renewal after Vatican II. That was a major change. Everybody saw the nuns go through that. One day they looked like Cupid dolls in the 13th century, and the next day they looked like real people.
Like
now,
you do.
Yes,
in street clothing.
Yes, and the laity, many of them worried a lot. They said, you know, what has happened to these sisters? They've gone absolutely crazy, and they've abandoned their schools, and they've abandoned their... Well, as a matter of fact, we did what we did in order to be able to move freely with people who needed us in a whole different kind of society now. Remember that we had been working in the ghettos for a couple hundred years, but we were working in Catholic ghettos. As the Catholics were pulling in, flowing in, you know, from Ireland and Germany and Spain, and then suddenly from Eastern Europe, and you had all those ethnic schools growing up, we were working with what we would today call a disadvantaged population. Then we began, after 150 years, we had prepared those people for a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant society where they fit in now very easily and without any kind of rupture. So we looked around, we suddenly had all sorts of other immigrants who weren't necessarily Catholic, but were hungry and starving and couldn't speak the language and couldn't get a job and were living in our inner cities. Who was going to be with them? So we just decided that the Catholic schools, we had built that system. It was ready to go. If you want to take it. And we began to move in other directions with poor people, not necessarily Catholics at all. We didn't ask for anybody's, and we don't to this day. We don't ask for your baptismal certificate. We don't ask to see your paycheck. We ask if you're hungry. We ask if you need anything. We ask if there's anything we can do. And that is our life. It's always been our life. But the change in uniform, my uniform now is whatever clothes people give me, by and large. That's my uniform. And that gets me on the street, and I understand. I know what that little girl feels like when she can't get a dress for a date.
Because you were that kid.
Yeah, I was that kid. So it's the same life, and yet it's a fuller life, it's a different life, it's the same ministry, and it didn't abandon anybody. It's better than it's ever been.
I want to explore that a little bit more, but I want to start with this. You say that what you and I believe in God colors everything we do in the name of God.
That's right.
So that it's the kind of God that we choose. You know, is it that you talk about it? Is it the Santa Claus God
Yes.
who fulfills all of our wishes, or the gotcha God who punishes you for all of your failures?
Just waiting for you to slip. Just waiting for you to make a mistake. I created you so you could go to hell. I mean, yeah, and the puppeteer God. You know, I want you to do this and this and this. And here's the God of the black box. Here, I have a plan for your life, Patty, and it's in this black box, and the box is locked, and you can't get at it. But if you don't complete that plan, you're not going to make it. I mean, that's human beings projecting onto God their own defects and disabilities. and smallnesses. Someplace along the line, some wag wrote on a wall someplace, first God created us, then we created God.
Oh, great. Give us then your definition of God.
Well, the question is, who is God in an evolutionary world? I mean, science has told us now how life comes about and how life is, in essence, a kind of self-creating. We see that in the fossils. Even the fossils show us something about God. We had the idea that God zapped everything into existence uniquely, with a special purpose. Well, if that's the case, then why did God make 40 kinds of toad? You'd think that God would have been better decision maker than 39 inefficient samples of it. So here you have the God of evolution, and that God for me is the God who seeds the universe with life and then allows that life to work its own way out and up and makes that life responsible for all other life. The God of evolution is the God of becoming, who is a humble God, sharing the power of life, sharing creation with the two of us. Now suddenly free will is really significant. Everything that you and I do we have recycling barrels in our houses now? If not, we are also responsible for the destruction of the earth. Suddenly, free will means everything. And the presence of God, who is life, is with me to hold me up, to call me on through these difficult moments in my life and the life of this whole society, so that together we can complete the creation that God began. God and I are partners now. God and I are co-creators. God and I are participants in this common task of being fully human and really taking care of this whole earth and everybody that's in it. This is a great God. This is not a small and puny God.
And this is something you've come to learn over years and years of questioning, and you say that doubt is not the enemy of faith. In fact, that's what brought you to where you are right now.
Yeah.
And that brings me to the Pope Francis's recent visit to the United States, which I think changed a lot of people's opinions about the Catholic Church. You said it was the smiling face of the Church, and he came when we needed him. And he's done so many positive things, I think a lot of people think, for the Church. But one of the things you hoped, and one of the things you said in an open letter to him, is that unless you address the issues of women, the poorest of the poor, then in a sense, your talk about helping the poor is empty.
Yeah, you can't do anything. You can't do anything about poverty unless you do something about women. And you cannot convince me that you really care about the poor and poverty unless you do something for women. Why? Because women are the poorest of the poor. When you sit here in affluent America, and you have college-educated women who are getting 25% less for the work they do than the men who are doing the same job, despite the fact that this widowed mother or single mother in a situation like my own mother had been in has to pay the same amount of money for a gallon of gas and a loaf of bread and a bit of milk and a doctor for that baby as any man does.
And a man told her she couldn't go to work.
That's right. She can't. There'll be one paycheck in this house, and it's mine, or otherwise I'm quitting. And your mother, and even you to a certain extent, you lived in that era. You know, when somehow or other it was an attack on a male's fragile IQ and image and ego, if a woman wasn't dependent on him. And yet, what we need are partnership marriages. You know, not him and this domestic servant. Not him and this dependent little inferior creature. And so unless we're both coming to fullness, unless Our legislation reflects equality, reflects justice, reflects opportunity for all of us, then don't tell me that as a country we care about women. We don't.
There is no evidence that you are slowing down, so I'm wondering,
Yeah.
what is on your bucket list? What is still left for Joan Chittister to do?
I've never had a bucket list in my life. I love that concept. It amuses me. My bucket list is open my door when somebody rings a doorbell and do what that moment demands. And I've been deeply blessed by going through life like that. I've received a great deal more than I've ever been able to give. I've learned more than I've ever taught, and I've seen holiness that's totally different than what I once believed sanctity was. It's not about the narcissistic and private self-sanctification of the self. It is about this contributing to the ongoing creation of God's creation. That's our holiness.
Thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you, Patty. Always.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Sister Joan Chittister. For more information on her work, visit our website at conversations.psu.edu. I'm Patty Satalia. We hope you'll join us for our next Conversation from Penn State.
Production funding provided in part by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by viewers like you. Thank you.